Hello from the Poe Show. I'm your host, Tynan Portillo. So I want to do more horror stuff on this channel. So today I'd like to review The Fall of the House of Usher. It's a really good show. All right, bye. I feel especially qualified to review this show because I'm kind of a Edgar Allan Poe expert. And I have a whole podcast dedicated to sharing the works of Edgar Allan Poe and adapting them to an audiobook format. So when it comes to adapting the works of Edgar Allan Poe, just how accurate is The Fall of the House of Usher? The Fall of the House of Usher is a Netflix original miniseries created by Mike Flanagan. And if you're not already salivating at the mention of that name, you should be. I mean, he's done Dr. Sleep, Midnight Mass, The Haunting of Hill House, The Midnight Club, and the cinematographer for the series was Michael Fimognari. But he's also done work for movies like The Lazarus Effect and Ouija, Origin of Evil. And The Fall of the House of Usher is, I think, a masterpiece. It's an original story that interweaves 8 of Edgar Allan Poe's most famous stories into a single narrative. The one constant narrative in the show is that Roderick Usher, after years of exploiting innocent people and building a mega empire on dangerous pharmaceuticals, watches his entire family and business meet their brutal demise. Demises? No, demise. Basically, the show is about a bunch of horrible people meeting some really terrifying endings and getting their cosmic justice. Spoilers ahead, obviously, but let's get into it. The show starts with death. Roderick, Madeline, and Lenore Usher attend a funeral for the death of all 6 of Roderick's children. Lenore is Roderick's granddaughter. And all of the children have apparently died tragic accidental deaths. Then we're introduced to Auguste Dupin, a detective who has been trying to prove for decades that the Usher Empire is corrupt. Dupin originates from the story The Murders in the Rue Morgue, which was the first detective story ever written, even before Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote Sherlock Holmes. Dupin goes to meet Usher at his abandoned childhood home to record Usher's confession to all of his crimes and finally put Usher behind bars. Immediately, we see what kind of person Roderick Usher is because he offers Dupin a glass of incredibly expensive cognac and says, "See what a few years of your worth tastes like." Damn. Asshole. Anyway, Roderick starts his confession by giving us his backstory and how he grew up poor as a kid. Just put the fries in the bag, sir. Roderick also ends up working for this guy called Rufus Griswold, and Griswold was another literary enemy of Edgar Allan Poe. We get some exposition that the Ushers were going through a court trial, one of many previous ones, to prove that their company, Fortunato Pharmaceuticals, has been committing crimes against humanity for a long time. But plot twist, one of the Ushers is going to testify against the family. There is no informant, so don't get your hopes up. It was just a tactic from Dupin to put pressure on the Ushers to start clawing at each other's throats, and it works expertly. But there's no payoff, so I thought I'd tell you here. We see that each Usher has a personal endeavor they're pursuing, more in an attempt to impress their father rather than help change the world. For instance, Victorine, played by Tania Miller, is trying to develop a device that can lengthen the human lifespan by keeping a human heart beating. But I'll tell that tale in a moment. See what I did there? I'm clever. Episode 2 follows the character of Prospero, played by Sarian Sapkota. And this guy, this mother, I hate him. This episode builds upon Prospero's contempt for his older brother Frederick and shows his arrogance. He literally goes to sit down at this meeting with his family lawyer, who is played by Mark Hamill, by the way, and he just starts saying stuff that could so easily incriminate his entire family because he thinks he has a good business idea. Makes sense, he's young, he wants to party, he feels like he's gonna live forever. And that follows the exact theme of the original Mask of the Red Death story. Only difference is, in the original story, people were hiding from a disease and the rich and powerful all just came together to party while all the poor died outside. And Prospero's arrogance and stupidity are totally true to his character. His plan is to open a pop-up club that changes venues every night and has an extremely exclusive list. You gotta pay $10,000. You gotta click the invite link within 5 minutes or else it disappears. and you have to pay an extra $5,000 for an entrance fee. What if someone just doesn't watch their phone for 5 minutes and then they just don't realize that they got the invite? What members would also pay an entrance fee? But he says he wants to kick off the whole sheboinkin by turning on the sprinklers. But hold on, we have a genius on our hands. Because he says since this building isn't hooked up to any water, then they'll just connect to the water tanks on the roof for the sprinklers. What? You just left a meeting where you learned that this building is condemned and dangerous chemicals have been leaking into the water. Again, it's within his character to do this. I just hate his character, especially because his next move is to invite his older brother's wife, Morella, to his cuddle puddle. Yeah. He wants to plow her. This is a very loving family. Granted, most of the ushers engage in some kind of sexual deviance. They use it as a form of control, a lot like Patrick Bateman in American Psycho. And ever since Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, masquerade balls and masks are used to take away identity. It's the theme of revealing one's truest intentions that they don't let see the light, ignoring a problem that is blatantly there. Morella arrives at the party, leaving a burner phone that Prospero gave her in a locker. We then see that Prospero's whole point of having this party is to record all the guests and have evidence of their actions to blackmail them. Why didn't you start out with that? The Red Death arrives, and her name is Verna. That's just an anagram for Raven. And just like the Raven in Edgar Allan Poe's literature, she represents death. Verna gives Prospero a little lecture on consequence, says bad boys always loved her, then leaves. Verna actually offers Prospero, as well as every other usher, a chance to stop and sort of repent or have some redemption for what they've done. She also appears to warn the innocent people at the party and get them to leave, mainly the staff who are just there by consequence of their job, which is nice. And with the innocent gone, they turn on the sprinklers, and acid rain pours down, melting everyone into that pasta sauce that Chef Boyardee puts in their cans of beef ravioli. Verna leaves a skull mask on Prospero's corpse as a final goodbye. And Prospero is dead. This episode follows Camille L'Espagne, which is a combination of the names of the victims in the original story of The Murders in the Rue Morgue. Spoiler for the original story, it was a monkey. An orangutan escaped from a sailor and then killed 2 women and stuffed one of their bodies up a chimney and then threw the other one out the window. The family has learned of how Prospero did an imitation of the Wicked Witch of the West. And Camille sets out to start a campaign to gain sympathy because of his death to help their image in court. And we get one of the best monologues in all of television history. Listen to the monologue about lemons in this show. We also see that in a schmugged up blackout, Napoleon Usher has exterminated his partner's cat. Camille's assistants, whom she usually likes to have adult fun with, says they are going to date just each other, so Camille fires the both of them. Yeesh, she's so bad at getting laid she can't even pay someone to do it with her. Side note, Tamerlane Usher and her husband Bill hire women to pose as Bill's partner, have dinner, do the dirty, because Tamerlane is into voyeurism, but her husband has always hated it. Without her assistance, Camille is forced to do some reconnaissance on her own. She investigates her sister's laboratory. Verna gives her a chance to walk away. She doesn't take it, and Camille finds Victorine's test subjects, monkeys. By the way, this whole show actually demonstrates how absolutely brilliant Carla Gugino is as an actress, and she's killed by a monkey.
Twist the bones and bend the back.
On to Napoleon Usher, who buys a new cat to replace the one that he sent to work downtown. Just like in the original story, which can be listened to on the Poe Show podcast, the cat represents a man's knowledge of the evil of his actions and trying to hide them, turning a blind eye to his own wrongdoings. Later, Napoleon is getting a favor from his partner Jules, and he adjusts his pillow and finds blood on it, then freaks out and knees Jules in the face. That unlocked a new fear for me because I am ticklish. The black cat is leaving dead animals all over the apartment, and it's getting to Napoleon. Frederick shows up to purchase some powdered happiness from Napoleon. Whilst getting the schmugs, the cat returns to scratch Napoleon in the eye. Like actually scratch the retina off of his eyeball, it looks like. It's pretty gruesome. Napoleon calls the lady he bought the cat from, Verna, obviously. Verna has a monologue about how cats are predators, and the black cat shows up one more time to just nibble on Napoleon's neck a little bit, so he repays the kindness by popping out one of its eyes. And you're a trash human being. Now the cat seems to be crawling in the walls, so Napoleon does some remodeling.
He's in the walls. He's in the goddamn wall!
And it actually scared me because in the original Black Cat story, the main character kills his wife and stuffs her body in the walls. And then the cat is also behind the walls, and police take down the walls and find her corpse, and the black cat was kind of giving that away. So I feared that this would also happen to Jules. But luckily, Napoleon sees Verna's dead body in the walls. Then he sees the cat on the railing outside and goes to smash it with a hammer! But he falls. Now, Napoleon Usher is dead. Moving on.
This is my heartbeat song and
buckle your seatbelts, because this one's gonna be bumpy. I don't know what that means. Episode 5 is probably my favorite episode because it follows my favorite story from Edgar Allan Poe, The Telltale Heart. We follow Victorine arguing with her partner, Dr. Alessandra Ruiz, because Victorine has just greenlit a human test subject for their surgery, which has a very high success rate of 0, and Ruiz doesn't want to do it. The machine that they use to keep the heart beating isn't working correctly, and it's too dangerous, but Victorine forged Ruiz's signature in order to approve everything. So she walks out, saying that all the ushers are monsters, and she's going to tell people about what they're doing, and Victorine throws a rock at the door in rage. Then we get a sudden cut to Victorine in her office, leaving Ruiz a message saying, "Sorry, call me back. She meant nothing to me, baby." No, I'm kidding, she doesn't say that. And she begins to hear a little squeak around her office, a small mechanical squeezing sound. Later, she's talking to her human test subject. Can you guess who it is? That's right, it's but Vic is preoccupied with finding the source of this sound. She calls Ruiz one more time to say that this experiment all hinges on her, and she starts saying, "I love you," but stops and then says, "I'll give you anything you want." Such an Usher move. Roderick Usher begins having a mental breakdown, theorizing that if he were to die before his other family members, then they might all be saved. But racked with guilt and looking for relief, he goes to Victorine's place to apologize. At Vic's place, she's playing music at a super loud volume and seems like she's not fully invested in the conversation. He's getting distracted by the music, so Vic turns it off and asks him if he can hear the sound. Behind Roderick, we see Ruiz walking towards the front door, so Vic follows, but Vic is actually having a flashback to what really happened when Ruiz left. When Vic threw the rock at Ruiz, she actually landed a killing blow to the back of her skull, and Ruiz began to have a seizure. As life drains from Ruiz's eyes, Vic says, "I take it back." In an effort to bring back Ruiz, Vic had cut open Ruiz's chest and installed her heart machine, and Roderick sees the cold metal heart pumping inside of Ruiz's corpse. Let me tell you, that pissed me off. Vic starts talking to the corpse as if she's alive because that's what she's actually convinced herself of using the mechanical heart. And Vic, in her psychotic mental state, says that she's sorry, threatens Roderick's life, wishes that he had offed himself, and says success is everything. Then jams a knife into her own chest. Her last word? Daddy.
I need some sleep.
Let's check in with Tamerlane Usher. She's not sleeping well. She keeps on falling asleep while doing various activities and doesn't remember what happened. But it's obvious that she is still doing things while asleep. More than sleepwalking, she's doing full editing of a script for her Goldbug fitness program launch. Something strange is going on. But what? Well, if you'd not interrupt, I am getting there. Tamerlane has mild hallucinations since she's so tired, so she tries to go to sleep. But like anyone over the age of 20 can probably relate to, falling asleep can be a hard thing to get your body to do. After she gives that up, her husband Bill tries checking in with her, but she's kicking him out because she's been seeing Verna in his exercise videos and believes that he's having an affair. Bill tries giving her support and saying, "I love you." Tamerlane says, "I don't." Damn. Asshole. Tamerlane is obviously willing to sacrifice her relationship with a very loyal, loving husband in order to further her brand and reach success, which is beautifully in line with the original poem by Poe, Tamerlane, Also available on the Poe Show podcast, and it's one of my favorites. Tamerlane, I'm just gonna call her Tammy. Tammy is doing the Goldbug presentation launch, and she asks where Bill is. Oh, honey, I think when you told him you wanted a divorce and accused him of f***ing some behind your back, he probably got offended by that. He probably doesn't want to see you. Before starting the launch, Madeline is giving Tammy the best pep talk of all time, saying that men are stupid.
A new analysis published in the British Medical Journal finds that men are idiots. From this study, men are idiots and idiots do stupid things.
Tammy says she misses Bill, and Madeline says you can get that anywhere.
They cite an armed robber who disguised himself by spray painting his face gold and then promptly died of the paint fumes.
God forbid you love someone, right? But now it's time to give the presentation. She's about to snap. It's super unclear what her Goldbug program is. It seems like a pyramid scheme subscription service where they mail you beauty and health products in these Goldbug boxes. And no two boxes will be the same, they're going to be tailored to you. In fact, American consumers can't even purchase these high-end products. They reference Goop, Gwyneth Paltrow's beauty and wellness company, so I thought maybe we'd get, some glow cream, some clothing, essential oil diffusers, a ring with a working vibrator on it encased in 24-karat gold. I mean, does Goldbug have that? What do you got? You got makeup? Don't even try to compete. In the middle of her speech, she sees Verna sitting in the audience and starts losing it. A video plays of Tammy giving her husband orders on what to do with one of their ladies of the night, and in a panic, she grabs her mic stand and smashes the TV screens for her presentation and throws it into the audience, trying to hit Verna, but she just hits poor Juno in the face. I'm a child. Someone gets hit in the face, and I just think it's hilarious. Tammy retreats back to her home and gets a call from her husband, but she throws her phone away in fear. In the other room, she can hear Verna pick up, pretending to be her and apologizing to Bill. Tammy grabs a fire poker and tries to strike Verna, but she disapparates back to Hogwarts.
Just wanted Harry to show me his little wand.
What?
No, he doesn't mean it like that. And he showed me his little philosopher's stones, too.
Hagrid's stone?
She keeps going through the house, smashing mirrors, and I understand that most might say, hey, you're obviously the only one who sees and hears what's happening, so why don't you stop what you're doing? It's not helping, and just go to a hospital or go get some help, but stop doing what you're doing. But that implies that the person who's making those choices is sane. Now, what is the definition of insanity? That's right, the state of being seriously mentally ill. But I meant the social definition of insanity, which means doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. Plus, Verna says to Tammy that she can call her husband and apologize, but Tammy isn't listening. Plus, the symbolism of smashing the mirrors is supposed to show that the person she hurts the most is herself, let alone that Verna actually says it in the scene. Tammy hates herself and has no identity outside of being an usher. She engages in self-destructive behavior because she thinks she's a failure, and that failure makes her fail. Then she justifies her self-destructive behavior because of it. This is something that Edgar Allan Poe wrote about a lot because he also participated in a lot of self-destructive behavior. He was a rampant alcoholic, a cynic, a gambler, a schmug abuser. Anyway, then she smashes a window above her bed and shards of glass fall into her body. Tamerlane has finally achieved her rest.
Don't even think about trying to escape.
Edgar Allan Poe's story of The Pit and the Pendulum was based on the Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
But this episode, while it doesn't deal with the Spanish Inquisition, does deal with some torture. It combines the stories of both The Pit and the Pendulum and Berenice, which means we are going to follow Frederick and Morella Usher. You remember Morella? The woman who became Deadpool but without the superpowers? Yeah, she's alive, and not well. And Frederick has been losing his emotional stability little by little. Ever since he learned that Morella had gone to Prospero's Cuddle Puddle, and Arthur Pym gave him her second phone that she used to get into the party, he's been intentionally causing her pain. He justifies taking her home and refusing to let doctors see her because he feels betrayed by her and believes that she cheated on him. And he's also been doing a lot of coke, and not the diet kind. He's plastered Morella's room with pictures of them on their wedding day as a form of mental torture, reminding her of how she's broken them apart. Fred is keeping Morella drugged up enough to feel the pain of her serious wounds, but she can't speak or move. He recounts how he first met Morella and how her smile seemed so real. He'd also just gotten a board seat for the pharmaceutical company at that time, and apparently the newspaper headline for that day read, "From Ruthless to Toothless." He believes that is how Morella sees him, as a non-threatening and harmless man. Roderick calls calls in Frederick to yell at him because he didn't clean up the mess at the condemned building like he was supposed to, and to tell him that he's the swing vote in keeping Roderick as the CEO. Now this fills Fred with joy. He finally has some major responsibilities and power. He gets a little more stern, a little more authoritative, a little bit more hopped up on cocaine. And like an egotistical psychopath, he uses a pair of pliers to rip out Morella's teeth. Damn. Asshole. He leaves to supervise the destruction of the condemned building, and Lenore breaks into her mother's room to call the police and rescue her. Fred goes to the condemned building and says he needs 5 minutes inside before they tear it down. He takes one more hit of the white rock and pisses on the floor, essentially pissing on his brother's grave, but he suddenly falls to the floor, unable to speak or move. Verna appears and reveals that she put Fred under a kind of spell and made him drop some of the paralytic drug he used on Morella into his bag of speedball, because she really hated the pliers bit. Then she imitates his voice and uses his radio to tell the construction crew to start the demolition. A wrecking ball starts breaking down the walls and ceiling, and a sharp piece of metal gets caught by a wire swinging above Fred like a pendulum. Verna lays next to Fred as he faces his impending doom, saying she didn't have to do it this way, but his cruelty towards his wife made her change her mind. She even acknowledges that all he wanted was his father's approval, but that doesn't excuse his actions. She pieces out, and Fred is slowly cut in half by the pendulum and then buried under the rubble of the ceiling.
Quoth the raven, nevermore.
Up to this point, Roderick Usher has lost all of his children. Juno has left him. We've learned that Roderick betrayed August in order to get close enough to his old boss and bury him behind a brick wall so he could become CEO. And he and Madeline made a deal with Verna, a personification of death, that they would live free of consequence for whatever actions they made and have a life of luxury for as long as they naturally lived. In exchange, the whole Usher bloodline, no matter what they did, would all die with them. Lenore has been texting Roderick throughout the show, but he hasn't picked up. Also throughout the show, we've been hearing a banging in the basement of Roderick's childhood home, and he says it's Madeline downstairs. Now, it's satisfying to see that Usher is not only being tortured by the horrifying deaths of his children, but also by the realization that he has no humanity or good in him, and neither did they. That was the nature of the question. Verna says, would you rather your children live a short but luxurious life, or a long life where they have to struggle? And I love the ending because it shows that August is going to go back to his family at the end of the day. You know, the show isn't saying that one choice is necessarily better than the other. It's stating that only people with certain morals would even consider taking a deal like that on behalf of their children. The Ushers took that deal not because they wanted what's best for their lineage, but because it's what gave themselves the best deal. And let's be honest, I mean, if you're a CEO and you realize you can cut some corners, little things here, little things there, in order to save you some money, some CEOs do that. They'll fire a certain number of employees until the efficiency of their business starts suffering. Now think about it this way. If you have 30 people hired and you don't really need that many people doing those jobs, then you fire some people. Let's say you fire 5 people. Some have to take on other jobs of the other people who left, but things are okay. So the next year, you fire 3 more. And the next year, you fire 4 more. So you've slowly gotten some of your employees used to taking on more work and not having more pay or compensation. And they're scared of getting fired themselves. And the reason that they do that is because they just cut out 12 yearly salaries. That's the nature of Verna's question. All right, off the soapbox. Arthur Pym finds where Verna's supposedly been hiding out and expertly ambushes her. Verna extends a deal to Arthur, one very similar to that of the Ushers, because now that the Ushers are going to all be gone, his protection will be gone too. She asks what his assets are. What does he love? He never married, he has no children. What does he love that he will sacrifice for her deal? But he says he has literally nothing. You can tell he's telling the truth. Next, we see Verna sitting on the edge of Lenore's bed. This is heavy. Verna doesn't want to take Lenore, but she has to, according to the terms of her deal. And she tells Lenore a bit about the future. Her mother is going to be all right, and she'll start a nonprofit and help people all over the world. And Verna says to Lenore, "You did that. Your choice to save your family echoes through the lives of millions." Then Verna takes Lenore away peacefully. Stupid that the innocent die for the crimes of the guilty. After she's gone, Roderick recites the poem of the Raven, and in the middle of the dark, stormy night, Roderick stares into the eyes of a raven, grieving the death of the last good thing he had. His true empire was the pile of corpses he left behind in his wake, and that's his only legacy. Roderick and Madeline meet at their childhood home for a final goodbye, a final drink. What's funny is Madeline says, "We built a life out of dirt, trauma, and empty pockets. We did that." No, you didn't. The only reason you had the life that you did is because you were protected by Verna. Well, little did she know that Roderick had drugged her drink, and now she's gonna take a little nap. Then Roderick sends Madeline off like a queen. An Egyptian queen. A mummy. He mummifies her body and replaces her eyes with sapphires. Oh, yeah, that's why she's been stumbling around downstairs, because she can't freaking see! And she strangles Roderick while the house falls and buries them both. Last word from the line of Usher. Nevermore. Verna makes one final appearance, leaving tokens from the stories of each Usher on their gravestones, and recites the poem Spirits of the Dead by Edgar Allan Poe. All in all, The Fall of the House of Usher is a masterpiece of storytelling and surprisingly accurate to the original stories of Edgar Allan Poe. I love Mike Flanagan's work, and I think that this show is honestly some of his best. The acting is superb, the music is amazing, the story as an overall narrative as well as individual episodes is perfectly interwoven. Really captures the nature of Edgar Allan Poe and his writing and why he wrote. The cinematography is gorgeous, the sets and lighting are perfect, the costumes are so well crafted. It's seriously a masterpiece. If you're looking for a good scare, watch this with the lights off. And if you're looking to see some bad people just meet their horrifying deaths, then watch this show. If you're a huge fan of Edgar Allan Poe like me, then watch this show. And if you're looking for more content based around Edgar Allan Poe and classic stories, ghost stories, fairy tales, then feel free to subscribe to this channel and listen to The Poe Show. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, then please like the episode, subscribe to this channel, and share it with your family and friends. This is the first time that I've tried something like this, and I am kind of nervous on how it's going to come out, but I'm determined on getting better, and I think it's going to be really fun. If you have a horror movie or a show or a short film or even a classic ghost story or something that you want me to do on the podcast, then leave a comment down below and let me know, because I'd love to hear your suggestions. Well, that's all for now, but you'll see me again on the next video of The Poe Show.
And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore.